Ah, women. The topic that thousands, if not millions, of single men around the globe research every day. Unfortunately, also a topic where great confusion abounds as many men have simply no clue how to deal with them. To most, it takes years of failures and unpleasant experiences to learn the hard way. Many men fall prey to a logical fallacy and ask women for advice. Sadly, it doesn't often work out because women either prefer to keep the truth from them, be it because it's not in their best interests or because the truth is embarrassing for them, or they simply have themselves no clue what would be actual good advice because they don't actually understand what attracts them. Just what should men do then? Sup there, I'm Phoenix and I read self-improvement books so that you don't have to, or at least so that you know which ones are worth reading. Of course, you are more than welcome to just learn from my videos directly. Now, let's answer the question I just posed. As they say, ask not a fish how to fish, but rather a fisherman, one that doesn't try to fish in the same area you do. Fortunately, there are some helpful fishermen that come from distant lands or have a belly full of fish that can give solid advice, and we will talk about the counsel of one of them now. This man is, or rather unfortunately was, may his soul rest in peace, Alan Roger Carey. I hope I pronounced the surname right. He was active in Manosphere and the Red Pill community before it ever was called so, and he also wrote a best-selling book, Mode 1, in year 2006. This book is really eye-opening, and today we are going to review some of his advice given in that book. To be specific, the advice on what to do to be attractive in a woman's eyes. Oh, I have to make an important distinction. It's not about what not to do, quote unquote, because I will cover that separately. The video would be very long otherwise, and I think we would rather all avoid that. Alright, let's get to it. An average man's idea on how to get into a woman's good graces is about being kind to her, helping her somehow, or gifting her some present, and generally working hard to obtain her feelings. I heard a lot about it never working out, and this has never worked out for me in the past either. Being older and more mature now, I understand that this doesn't work because it also means that the men will do a number of things that put women off at the same time. As I said previously, I will list those in another video, but fortunately, if you follow Carey's advice, you will naturally avoid doing a lot of these unattractive things anyway. What does he advise then? Well, it can be summarized in several points. 1. The man must be direct and decisive. If he likes a woman, he should waste no time telling her about it and inviting her to bed or into a relationship, whichever it is he wants. He should have the guts to voice his intentions confidently without shame. It's crucial to say exactly what one wants. If a man lies about his intentions, for example, he says he wants to be friends, but actually he wants to F her brains out, then it will lower his chances of success a lot. Being indecisive, hesitant, indirect, or cautious will ruin his chances as well. The exact time frame to do this isn't fixed, but generally it should be done in the first several sentences at the earliest or within one day at the latest. Any later and it will be less and less attractive. Only doing so early on shows that the man has balls. 2. The man should be indifferent to the woman's reaction. There are plenty of fish in the sea. If she agrees, great. If she doesn't, move on, without being affected and without caring what she, or anyone else for that matter, thinks about him. Men pussyfoot and are reluctant to act this way, worried about scaring the woman off, But ironically, this hesitation and holding back puts women off, while being painfully and unashamedly honest will give good results with most women already interested in you. They may pretend they don't like it or even react with shock and anger, but it's only to see if the man will chicken out and take back his words. If he does, it will show them that he's not all that after all. That's why it's crucial to be unruffled by rejection. Many men who are afraid of rejection hide their intentions at the start. For example, I only want to be your friend, which backfires completely and only makes their chances much lower. 3. The man should be composed and self-assured, and he not only shouldn't take his words back, but also shouldn't get defensive if criticized for his approach. 4. The last one. The man should be egotistic to a reasonable degree, and only engage with the woman so long as not to waste time. Notice, while the aforementioned is pretty much synonymous with how a Chad or Tyrone, as they call playboys on the internet these days, would act, it doesn't mean that the man should be crass, rude, vulgar, or in any way aggressive or pushy. The more a woman rejects such a man, the more unattractive he will look if he keeps on pushing and behaving poorly like this. The point is in being confident enough to be honest, unhesitant, and direct, and not in being a hooligan. Bad boys are successful with women because they display those and some other traits, and not because they are bad boys. It's basically a trade-off for women. In other words, it's not that women like bad boys per se, but that they prefer men who have such traits even if they are bad in some ways. Alright, let's go back to the 4 points and talk about how they work. The first point shows that a man is confident, and having confidence is a very crucial factor if a man wants to be attractive in a woman's eyes. That and being direct are very masculine. On the other hand, the less direct, and more deceptive a man acts, the more manipulative it is. And being manipulative is neither masculine nor something a woman would appreciate. Not to mention, an average man is nowhere as good at manipulation as women, so many of them can both see through it and use it against him. A bonus point is that the quick and decisive nature of this approach allows both the man and the woman, but especially the man, to avoid wasting not just a lot of time and effort, but often also money. The second point also shows confidence, but in a more specific aspect. The thing is, if a man is clearly crushed by a woman's rejection, it communicates 2 things to her. That he doesn't have any other options and that he's worse than her. Women like men who attract other women because it serves as a proof of his attractiveness and because women enjoy competing with other women. Well, probably not if they lose. That's why a man who's never been popular with women may get hit on by them once he gets a girlfriend. So that's the optionality part. But what about the man being worse than the woman? If the man wasn't seeing the woman as some kind of prize or goddess, then he wouldn't be so disappointed by failing to get her. On the other hand, if he's calm after being rejected, it shows he's confident in getting other women on her level or better. Why does that matter? It does because while a man wants a woman that meets a certain minimum of his criteria, women seek men who are better than them, preferably in multiple aspects. It's that so-called hypergamy that you can hear about on the internet in recent years. The third point is important because some women will test the man after he reveals his intentions. They will try to shame or manipulate him to see if he backs out. If he does, that tells women that his masculine approach was just a pretense he put on to pick up girls, and not his true nature. As a consequence, women will lose some or all their interest. The fourth point doesn't mean that the man should be narcissistic or selfish. It means that he should place his needs first. If a woman feels that he places her needs first, she will be put off because his behavior shows her that he thinks that she's more important than him, so she will now doubt that he's better than her, which is what a woman wants from her man usually. Again, the hypergamy thing. The more enthusiastic he is, the more she will think that he's desperate to get or keep her, and the stronger her doubts about him will be. Of course, if the man is completely selfish, then it will communicate to the woman that he only wants to exploit her. Therefore, some balance has to be struck there. Only immature young girls will fall for a truly selfish guy like they do for bad guys. Are there any other applications for this approach? This approach was made, as far as the book is concerned, solely for men who want to approach a woman. However, thinking of other applications of this sort of approach, I can think of two right off the bat. Firstly, men can apply it in contracts that have nothing to do with sex and relationships. It will be well received by women and men alike, except perhaps for non-masculine men. Of course, the man needs to adjust it. For example, the selfish quote-unquote part will be inappropriate in some settings, such as when the man is dealing with his superiors. I'm not telling you to be a pushover either, though. Secondly, women can also apply it romantically to men. Many men find it very attractive when a woman is honest and direct with her feelings. However, it probably won't work if the man doesn't find her physically attractive anyway. Additionally, a softer tone rather than an overbearing one would fit a woman much more. Let us talk about individual adjustment now. I can imagine that not everyone may be comfortable with using this approach. That's okay. It's much more important to be yourself and feel comfortable with it. That will be another way to express confidence, and most women will catch on and appreciate it more than if a man were to force himself to act like I described here. For those who would like to use a similar approach but not in this exact form, I'll reiterate the most important parts that must be included. First, honesty and authenticity. The man ought to truthfully express his intentions instead of using any excuses or lying about what he wants or even implying something else entirely. Second, directness and decisiveness. The man ought to quickly decide what he wants with a woman, and then he should directly express it after he makes up his mind. Don't rush to do it instantly regardless of time, place and occasion, but also don't wait for the so-called perfect moment. Third, confidence and indifference. The man ought to be confident the entire time, and that includes being indifferent to any negative reaction she might have, including rejection. And the last one, proper priorities. The man ought to prioritize his own needs and desires, but not disregard the woman's. As long as you focus on these parts, the rest is up to you. Well, unless you also do something stupid, like the unattractive behavior related to this topic that I said I would mention in another video. Now, let's talk about my experience using this approach. To be frank, I have only read about this approach a few years ago, when I already stopped being proactive on the dating scene. Fortunately, even though I was clueless prior to this, I still had some occasions when I acted in line with this idea, i.e., like an asshole or like a bad boy. And indeed, when I did have some success, at least during those particular moments, i.e. in the short term. On the other hand, when I didn't act in accordance with this sort of mindset in the past, I would have completely no success to the point that I never even kissed a girl before finishing college. When I was indecisive or indirect, I got to enjoy flirting at most, and now I feel like the girls perhaps enjoyed me more because they got to toy with me. When I was inconfident or showed emotional reactions, girls would clearly become colder and more indifferent to me. Finally, sucking up to women never worked for me either. I was usually politely dismissed or completely ignored. And I think anyone who ever simped for a girl eventually found out that it doesn't work, unless you are rich and she wants too much of you. In fact, it's a very big one on the list of unattractive behaviors that I will discuss in a future video. Therefore, while I do see a few weak points in this sort of mindset, I am generally appreciative of it. It's just that I prefer a different approach, which I will tell you about near the end of the video. Okay, time to summarize the whole approach. We will start with its strengths. 1. It raises success rate for men as they behave more attractively. 2. Both sides can save time and effort, especially the men. 3. It renders female games and manipulation ineffective. 4. It is grounded in integrity and honor. There is zero manipulation. 5. It prevents the man from exhibiting a number of unattractive behaviors. 6. It decreases competition as the average man has a much less effective dating strategy. And lastly, 7. Not just for the short term, it is a viable lifelong stance. Now let's talk about some weaknesses. 1. Women are likely to be too embarrassed to agree even if they want to when a man directly approaches them and immediately states his intentions, whether it's about sex or dating. Contrarily, those who readily agree may not be a good relationship material. 2. I believe it's best for a woman to be the one bringing up dating and relationships first, because relationships are more important to women, just as sex is relatively more important to men. So it's possible the woman will try to make the man put more effort into getting sex than if the man's commitment was still at stake, which means the man either has to put more effort or dump her for making him jump through the hoops. In other words, if what a man wants is a relationship, a woman can take advantage of it to make him try harder and pay a higher price. 3. If the man immediately comes in aggressively like this, a woman may be overwhelmed and not know what to do. 4. When not properly carried out while minding all 4 basic factors, it will backfire and the man may be seen as creepy. 5. It may also backfire if a man is overly expressive of his desires, like some kind of pervert or lunatic. 6. Me Too and possible social repercussions are unfortunately a relevant worry in the Western societies nowadays. This also makes it harder for many men to even consider adopting this approach, as the social risk is not low in some social settings. On the other hand, there's a silver lining. Such infamy may have a positive effect on some women, especially if you clearly don't care. 7. Because this approach is starkly different from an average man's, it may be difficult to adopt it, much less do it all correctly in the beginning, because of how much of a paradigm shift it is. For example, a man may not quite believe that it will work, or may struggle with guilt for acting like a ruffian, causing him to either execute it poorly or feel bad about it and try to backtrack. And the last point, if a man adapts this approach to ask a girl out, but then he drops it at any moment in the relationship, assuming he succeeds, the relationship is very likely to end very fast, and it will all be his fault. My conclusion is that every man should understand the importance of this approach, as opposed to a generic tentative, indirect, unconfident, humble, and sometimes emotionally vulnerable and uncertain approach. I believe that these are very important tenets that most men underestimate the importance of when it comes to women, or they don't even know at all. This is because the opposite of this approach is very unhealthy when it comes to relationships and such. If a man is dishonest, he can't make a strong, deep relationship, and his relationship will be in jeopardy when he's caught lying. If a man is indirect, it's a breeding ground for conflicts and misunderstandings. Honestly, it's enough for women to be the ones who are indirect and so misunderstood by their partners. If a man is indecisive, unconfident, or overly emotional, i.e., weak as perceived by a woman, his female partner will feel neither safe nor comfortable with him, and may even despise him for it, least of all feel attracted to him. If a man is too occupied with making sure his partner is happy and prioritizing her over himself and his own needs, then that may bring forth another host of problems, such as a midlife crisis in the man if he persists in this relationship, or entitlement in his partner if she keeps getting more and more. Not to mention that she will probably react to it in the same way as if he was weak too. Not to mention the negative perception it will create in a woman, as I have discussed earlier. Finally, one more point I have to emphasize. This isn't an approach you can use off and on with women. You have to adopt it permanently. This is because, as I touched upon a few times already, if a man stops using it, the woman he used this approach to get will very likely dump him, as she will stop being attracted to him and will suspect that everything so far had been a lie and he's someone completely different than he pretended to be. And she will be in her right to do so, because the man basically pulled a bait and switch like some women do. Anyway, this isn't just a trick to get laid. This is an instruction on how to change your behavior entirely to stop being unattractive forever. Therefore, as you can see, adopting this approach allows to avoid a large number of mistakes a man can do in a relationship or in male to female relations in general. Mistakes that will cost him his relationship and possibly also some health, happiness, and possessions in some cases. However, I still see 4 issues with this approach. The first issue. Being too direct can go too far, so a slightly subtler approach may be better before breaking the ice. Waiting until a woman is more comfortable in one's presence, i.e., a few minutes into a conversation at least, may be preferable. Of course, this also depends on your intentions, whether it's just for sex or for something more, and on local social norms. The more your proposition will be against perceived local norms, meaning the more shameful it will be for a woman to publicly say yes to your offer, for example, because it will make her look easy, the more likely it is that the woman will refuse, even against her actual wishes, especially if she's not at ease with you yet. The second issue. Let's be honest, the dating landscape isn't the best nowadays, so there are risks to using this method in the West right now. On the one hand, if it does work instantly, chances are it's not the kind of woman you would want to have a long-term relationship with anyway. On the other hand, it may not only fail to work, but you also risk gaining in fame. Well, if you identify as a trans female lesbian, maybe you can get away with it, lol. Anyway, I see two main risk factors here. Picking the wrong woman to approach, for example, a lesbian feminist, and not pulling this mindset off correctly, which will likely happen before you gain experience with using it. The third issue. The relationship power dynamics that result from this approach, especially if your goal is a relationship as a man, are not the best. I believe the best model for relationships to work in the long run is for the woman to be the one pursuing the man instead of the other way around. This puts the man in the superior position in terms of power dynamics, i.e., he's the leader, and from what I've seen in my life, this sort of relationship is usually the healthiest and the most lasting, at least as long as the man remains strong and stable. However, this kind of setup is much more demanding than the direct approach the author is talking about, because it requires the man to be attractive enough to stand out among men, which means that he must be leading in as many as possible of the following categories: facial attractiveness, healthy physique, financial success, masculine frame of mind and masculine character, mental strength, sexual ability or at least experience, and a good understanding of how to deal with women. All this means that the difficulty rises exponentially, and it requires at least several years of hard work to become sufficiently attractive for most men. The fourth issue. Let's not lie, how attractive your face is as a man also matters. Well, not as much as some people think, but it still does. And it does so in two ways. One is obvious. The less attractive you look, the less tolerance and patience you will be met with. Many studies suggest that attractive people, regardless of sex, meet with the most goodwill in life. The other one is less obvious. If you are a less attractive man, chances are you will lack confidence, at least partly because you would have less experience of being successful with women compared to a handsome man. I did hear of ugly men who were popular with the ladies, but they were invariably oozing confidence at all times, which made the women involved willingly overlook their inferior looks. Not to mention some other positive aspects they had. Many women, especially nowadays, are unlikely to accept it if your looks are too inferior to theirs, even if you do ooze confidence. Now that we are almost done, this video has a large imperfection I must address. The fact that I didn't approach women in accordance with this mindset to verify it and share my findings. I apologize for that. However, I don't wish to approach women for that kind of petty reason. I have only seen one woman whose face attracted me in the last 2 years anyway. The former is distasteful and shallow and not what a man should do. The latter means that the Carrie's method wouldn't work for me because women would notice my interest wouldn't be genuine and would either get suspicious or they would reject me right away. I hope you enjoyed and perhaps learned from my review. Thank you for watching. I will continue to review self-improvement concepts and methods, so if you are interested in seeing more in the future, then please be a good boy or good girl and like and subscribe. I also invite anyone who has had experience with the Mode 1 concept to share their impressions in the comments. P.S. Since I couldn't personally verify the approach beyond any shadow of doubt, I attempted to at least find some hard data on the author himself. Unfortunately, all I could find was that he was a known womanizer and he only got engaged to a woman half his age at 56. Even more unfortunate, he died of a heart attack at the age of 59, 2 years into his marriage with a 2-year-old son. However, it appears that he was known as the King of Verbal Seduction and the godfather of direct verbal game advice and wisdom. And he was an early red pill guru, active in the early 2000s, which is honestly when I was still a teen, so I don't know much about this period in the sense of red pill community and such. But many people say he changed their lives with his advice, and Mode 1 is a bestseller, so I suppose we can treat him as an authority to some degree at least, and consider his reputation probably well earned.